Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Heart Mind Happy Hour. We have a special episode for you today. I am super excited. For those who don't know, Heart Mind Happy Hour is a show that I lead. I'm your host, Holly Copeland, and I bring forward topics around consciousness, neuroscience, wellness, and today we're talking about leadership. And we're following up on a conversation that we had last week with Monica Augustine and Shweta Shamani about being enough, and it felt like one of the natural places to take it. And one of the quotes that I talk about in the article that I wrote that was the inspiration for this was the quote about, "Since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed," which is the first sentence in UNESCO's constitution. And I really feel like that's a beautiful quote. It touches me deeply. Because it really talks about the importance of really our inner world and our own minds as being the places we need to start to build good leadership. And it emerges from there in this time right now of such high stress and anxiety globally. With everything that's going on, there's a real need for wonderful, positive, good leadership. And so I felt like it would be a wonderful thing to bring on some emerging leaders, our future leaders, and talk to them about leadership, what it means to them, what they're seeing, what they're talking about amongst their friends. Get a young perspective. So today I'm really excited to have here with me. First, we have Abby Copeland. She is a junior at Lander Valley High School. She's a National Honor Society member. She's a HOBie alumni, which is a national leadership group. And maybe she can speak to that a little bit. She is my daughter as well. She's also a very accomplished violinist and just very thoughtful person. So I'm really excited to have her here. Welcome, Abby.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I look forward to exploring topics of leadership and these days with everybody on Facebook Live and with Sara and Stephen.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Welcome, Abby. And then next we have Sara Taubman. She is a junior at UCLA, majoring in human biology and society. She's an academic All-American. She also has spent a lot of her life as a gymnast and is on this famed UCLA gymnastics team that is kind of renowned globally. So really excited to have her here. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you. I'm very excited to engage in this conversation with you all.
Awesome. We're really excited to have you here and hear your perspective. And last but certainly not least, we have wonderful meditation teacher, mystic, author, all around amazing person, Stephen Altair. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you so much, Holly, and special welcome to Abby and Sara. And I'm hoping not to be able to say too much. I'm here to listen in awe to the power of what happens when you're, those ages of 16 and 20, and you bring such peace of mind and insight and wisdom to our planet. So yeah, go for it. I'm so excited about this.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. So I think maybe we'll start with Abby, and just to, I've talked about that quote from, the defenses of peace being really starting first at home. And I would love to hear from your perspective, what does it mean to be a good leader? I know you came off a really big retreat at HOBie, and you talked a lot about leadership there. What are your thoughts about it?
I think that quote is one of the principles, the basics of being a good leader, showing leadership traits, is yourself and having a clear mind, being true to what your values are as a person, and keeping those close to your heart as you move through the complicated world of leadership. It doesn't have to be complicated. It often is complicated. but and moving through that, keeping yourself and truly being clear and knowing yourself. And then from there, we can start to talk about what it means to be a good leader, and that leadership isn't with leadership doesn't depend on your personality. You don't have to be an extrovert. You don't have to be in a position of power. Everyone has their own space for leadership in the world. And I truly believe that. That's what Hobie is taught with UNESCO's principles. Everyone has their space for leadership. And leadership really is for everybody. It's not dependent on your power.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that actually before. Earlier today, we were talking about leadership as being something that's needed at all levels, that oftentimes we view leadership as something about just a person kind of at a higher position, and how really at every level, whether you talk about leadership in a family, and fostering qualities of leadership in a family, or you talk about your friend group, or you talk about your community, or you talk about, and we have all different kinds of communities, a meditation community, there could be so many different kinds. So it's really like this nested circle, and it starts with every interaction that you have, right?
Completely. I completely agree with that. Sara, what do you think about what it means to be a leader and those qualities?
Well, specifically going off of, the conversation that you're having about, the power role, I think something really interesting that is very deliberate with my team at UCLA is we actually are one of the few teams that we don't have team captains, which is unusual, but it's deliberate because we want to empower everyone to have different forms of leadership and everyone to be a leader, and not to be dominated by any one or two captains or any one or two just seniors. And we really push that, I really learned right from day one when I was a freshman. They're like, yes, you're a freshman, but that doesn't mean you get to make freshman mistakes and just, willy-nilly follow whatever's going on. You need to use your voice, and you need to, speak up when you feel like it's appropriate. But at the same time, something that I think is really important to emphasize, which we've talked about as a team, is the way that leaders lead by example, and that it's not just with your voice. And even I think something that's underemphasized is the power of a silent leader, because I think that it really takes full listening and full attentiveness for people to have full respect and to feel heard and to have a cohesive group. You need to be able to gauge the feelings of everybody in the room and move forward. And I think that's definitely for a group, but even with yourself, it's really important to take the time to be silent in leading your own life too, to just like listen to your environment and calm kind of the loud thoughts that are going on inside you.
So wise. I could ask you about 10 questions from that beautiful response.
That was brilliant.
Stephen, do you want to let you comment in if you'd like?
Sure. That's really beautiful, both of you, Abby and Sara. I do think you've highlighted. It's like Ollie said. I can just listen now, because Abby, you mentioned about knowing yourself. It's so crucial, about the fact that we are looking for leadership for everybody. It's like this one humanity that we hear the Dalai Lama talk about, that we really believe in. So that leadership and about creating space for leadership, I totally agree with you. You've both said such profound things, the space for leadership, and about the silent leader that Sara, that you were saying. I mean, when you really look at both of you, you've talked about silence and space, and here I've just come off a Dzogchen retreat with the well-known Tibetan Lama Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, who's talking about silence, space, stillness, So you're talking about the same things. I think I went to a talk by a Harvard professor and a guy called Ron Richard, who was talking about exactly this, about leadership and about the kind of space that we need to take for leadership, and the fact that we don't spend a lot of time in silence. What you were saying, Sarah, so perfect, that about full listening and silent leadership. Wow, what profound values. If the UN and the US government and the UK government and the governments around the world were just to listen to what you've said in those introductions, I mean, we would have a profound change in our planet, because people would start listening fully, and they'd dwell a little bit more on silent leadership and discover the kind of values that do lie right here. Because, really true self-awareness is primordial. It's innate. We all have it. And if you listen to anybody out there that tells you don't have it, then they're not giving you the right message. So that was beautiful, really, really and truly. One humanity, silent listening, silent leadership, and self-realized leaders. Yay! I'm on that train.
Yeah, we'll nominate Sara and Abby for next.
Yeah, we know who we're voting for in the next
I
election.
know. I'd vote for Sara, I think.
Yeah. You were the one just did the leadership retreat and all that, but interesting to hear the different perspectives and the overlaps in leadership. And one thing I think that is interesting, at least coming, from an education perspective, I apply for, I'm enrolling in classes every quarter, and, they tell you a lot of times, your advisor's like, I really recommend you take COM 1, which is like a public speaking class, which I think is an excellent skill. I took that class. It was great. But I mean, I know it sounds silly, but you never hear of like, a public listening class, or it's not something that's taught, and it's assumed that if you're being quiet, you're listening. But I don't think that's always the case. And I speak from my own experience of sometimes having a conversation and my own thoughts are so loud that I realize I don't even know what the person just said, And so I think that's where a lot of miscommunication comes from, is these quiet assumptions as we're getting ready to jump to the next point and to use our power of our voice. But we sort of view silence as a submission of power. But I think that through education, we need to reframe that and emphasize the power of silence and true listening.
I totally agree with that. I have had my own experiences with that. I'm quite an extrovert, but the best leaders I know, the best listeners I know are all introverts. And not that extrovert introvert is what matters, but they are such great listeners, and they can really connect with everybody around them by just listening. And in Lander, my own personal experience, we are the town I live, for those not in Wyoming, but we are really divided economically, politically, in many different ways, as just people in groups that we identify with. But it's been such a gift to go to a public school where I get to listen to the kids sitting next to me and their experiences, and it's truly transformed how I view the world and my own forms of leadership, how I go about leading, how maybe I don't go about leading, how I let them empower them to lead because of their experiences. So listening is by far the most important trait I've learned. It didn't come naturally to me. I wasn't a natural listener. I wish I could say that I was a natural, I'll just listen here, but it's so important. I totally agree with you, Sara.
Right, and I think, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was just going to respond to, I understand, like, I'm a little bit, depends on the setting, extrovert, introvert, but, I think that, like, we take it very seriously that we teach introverts how to speak and be comfortable, but we don't even think that, like, maybe we should teach the people who are extroverted to listen, and we just think, oh, with it, like, we have to figure it out. We have to, take that upon ourselves. And I think that's part of the reason why, especially like meditation can be very difficult, or listening can be very difficult. But it is kind of an interesting, I would like to hear your thoughts on anyone who wants to answer this, what you would think about, like, how we can teach that.
Stephen, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was part of a Juilliard program a few years ago where they talked about open-eyed meditation. They talk about ways of becoming still before you actually practice something really significant, because you actually come into a core, like you come into a view. They use pretty much the same expressions as the Tibetan Buddhist practices, for example, or Mahamudra or Dzogchen, which talk about a view that we all have. We all actually share this view. It's what you're talking about, this spacious awareness, this ability to be able to be compassionately, spaciously present for each other. And so there are definite ways. For example, I mean, I'm sure you can tell us, Sara, about sports performance, and Abby, you about music performance. There are ways especially in arts and sports, because I'm involved in that as well. I work with groups of young people in the performing arts. And so we adopted a lot of the Juilliard practices as ways of preparing for really big events, for performances that we might be doing overseas, where you actually take time to be silent and tune into your character or your performance ability or your true self or your view before you actually do it. And that's, there are lots of research studies that show that, studies that have been done on basketball performance, where they'll take a control group, they'll take a experimental group, and they'll take an actual group in sports. And the actual group is playing, and practicing. The experimental group is just visualizing and practicing basically in silence. They're not actually doing the practice, and the control group is doing neither. And they've proved that those experimental groups that are, basically just visualizing, feeling and actualizing that inner view, are able to perform at very, very similar levels. So I'd be interested, in hearing both of you, because both of you are leaders. I'd be really interested in hearing what's helped you in these high-level performances. You're a very high level of gymnastics performance, Sara, and you're at a high level of musical performance, Abby. So what helps you in those peak performance, because that's all about leadership too. Like you said, there is a really strong, stable confidence that you need to develop in the view of whatever you happen to be doing. And people love to know how you do that, because when you're in peak performance, I played tennis for years at a competitive level, and I know that you're in a match and it's tied, and then it becomes deeply psychological. There's a slight variance of your inner view, of your inner stability, and you've lost the match. You only need to lose 1 point, when you're at deuce and you're going back and forth, advantage, it only takes one slight moment. And it's the same with, musical performance, a missed note, or gymnastics performance, a missed, a missed routine, or it's one slight imbalance at the end of a routine or something. And your point system is so different than if you'd done something and executed it in a very stable way. So I'd be really interested in hearing what you've found in terms of, leadership and peak performance, and that flow, because it is about a flow state, at the levels of what you're both doing.
Sure, I'll go. I'll speak to music performance first. We go to these group recitals as my studio, and you see the young kids and the older kids. I'm an older kid now, but I didn't used to be, performing in front of all these people for music. And it's just you and maybe your accompanist. And I've done that since I was really little. And I distinctly remember that when I was little, it didn't affect me. As little kids, you're not thinking, oh, what are they thinking? Your mind's not going to what's going on in the room. You're simply to yourself, and that's a characteristic a bunch of young kids, I think, are blessed with from a young age. So, but then maybe as soon as I turned 10, we'll say, it was complete chaos for me, and I have all these recordings. My dad records all my music, and I'd be going fine, and then it's not that I didn't practice enough. It's not that I wasn't prepared. I didn't think of all these things, but to what I needed to practice. But in the moment, I would lose this concentration for just a split second, like you were saying. I would just lose it, and then I would make a mistake I've never made it before in the entire song that I was playing. And this repeatedly happened year after year after year, even last year, to me, every single time I performed in violin. And it would be at the end, generally, because you're thinking, oh, I've gotten this far. I'm doing so well. I can't believe it. Like, this is going to be great. I'll submit this to a college. Like, this is wonderful. And that's all that it takes to lose that focus. But now I go into these performances really just thinking about my violin playing and what it feels like to move my bow on the string, what it feels like to move my fingers, what my head is doing, what I'm in my own mental space, and that has really helped me. And I can say that's true for soccer as well. When I am on the field, you know, people will be yelling from the sidelines. I don't hear any of it. I've never heard any of it. You know, it's really, soccer is the gift of having to be completely focused on you and your touches and what you're doing. And that's a great gift, is that attention that you're able to learn. I think it's learned. You know, there's some mistakes, and then you slowly gather what it feels like to be truly focused.
Mm-hmm. I think focus and attention is key. Yeah. How about you, Sara?
Yeah, well, I can respond to the first part where you were talking about, you know, this power of role playing. And it's actually interesting. That's something that UCLA Gymnastics does every year. We have music to our floor routines, and we get to pick that music. And usually it's something, it doesn't necessarily reflect our personality, but it reflects the story we want to tell, or, you know, something we want to embody. And we do this thing called Operation Peacock, and we dress up as the character that we're going to be, and then we kind of do our routine in front of our teammates, and we like come up with a little name. And it's really powerful because it's something little kids do. Like, since I was young, I loved playing dress up and, you know, pretending to like go grocery shopping in our little play food and do all these little things, or play with my dolls and pretend to be a mom. And it's like, I think this is an interesting time to acknowledge that, you know, that power of like pretending, because I think this is also something I've been thinking about beyond sports. Like, you know, I was talking to my older sister who just graduated from college, and I told her, like, you know, remember how we used to love to play grown up? Like, even when you're a grown up, you're not too old to like pretend to play kid, and like, you know, bring back that joy. And I think it can bring you into a lot of different spaces if you allow yourself to kind of first, you know, decide who you want to be, or what persona or feeling you want. And if you don't feel it at the moment, you can initiate it by acting. And that's not to say like don't be authentic, but, you know, that's something we talk about going back to leadership. Just your attitude coming into the gym. Maybe you were up all night studying. Maybe you got into an argument with your roommates. You know, it doesn't matter. When you walk in, you clear your head and you come in with a good attitude, because that's a form of leadership in itself. Like your body language and your posture, how you're standing and presenting yourself. And a lot of studies show that even just fixing your posture can initiate mood improvement. So that's kind of my view on that side of the question. I can also add to the visualization component, or if you want to respond to some of that first, either way.
Yeah, no, do add to the visualization one. I love that.
Okay.
Please.
Well, this is something something I'm actually been really working on during quarantine. It's something I've been doing my whole life, the visualizing. But visualizing is different for everyone. So some people can just lay in bed and close their eyes and picture themselves doing the skills. And for many years, I would do that before my competitions. You know, sometimes when I'm in bed, I fall asleep doing it. So, you know, it's hit or miss there. But sorry, it's a little noisy here. Clay, something that I find I like to visualize while my eyes are open and I'm kind of walking through. So I'm like using my arms and I feel like my muscles activating that are initiating the skill, even if I'm just kind of standing in a room and going through kind of, if I'm twisting, I'm just kind of using my arms to do a little bit of like mental cueing. But something recent for me as I've been getting into more yoga and meditation is like actually applying my breath to my visualization. So like on my landings, I'm like doing a quick exhale and like breathing into the ground and feeling my feet grounded. And I can do that outside. I can do that in my room. And that's a really powerful tool for two reasons. One, visualization in gymnastics is heavily relied on because as you get older, your body can't do as many repetitions. So you need to be able to do them in your mind. And secondly, I mean, this is a challenge I never imagined not having access to a gym, but it's a very real challenge. And even now, you know, the regulations are very restricted. So it's very limited hours, you know, and so it's like I'm continuing to practice that visualization. And to anyone listening, I think, you know, we talk about, okay, so how can we go back to doing our normal? How can we do our normal things, you know, during this period? But maybe the answer is that we don't need to do our normal things and we need to approach it from a different angle. And, you know, maybe this will be the thing that actually makes the difference, you know, in performance.
Yeah, that's that. You know, that what I'd like to pick up on something you said, because you mentioned about posture cues. You know, that's one of the things that can make a successful leader, and I totally agree with you. You know, if you look at our leaders around the world, you can definitely see when they're not confident about the strategy that they've outlined. You can see it in the way they hunch or they bow their, you know. So I'd like to ask you both. I'm really interested. What success, like if you were to give a few success tips, like, and it could be very specific to, you know, playing a musical instrument or playing soccer or doing gymnastics. What are say one or two success tips like posture? Because it's the same for meditation practice. There are definitely things that help bring about awareness and bring about stabilization, such as, you've already mentioned some of them, posture, such as breathing, such as being able to understand what is happening in your mind. So being very, very aware of what arises, and also focus, you know, being able to bring attention, focus, concentration, and so on, and absorbing into a state, which is pretty much the same when you're playing a musical instrument. I'm a flautist, and when you're doing sports, because I used to do gymnastics and I've played years of soccer, that, you know, you kind of get it. Yeah, love it. I used to play for a Brazilian team, and we had a first division, a couple of second division players, and like they were awesome. I could have just sat on the sideline and watched them. Anyway, they were it's a lot of fun. And you know, when you're out there, whether it's in a gymnastics event or a soccer tournament, you know, you are absorbed. You're right there. You know, you're like in the zone. You don't kind of think of it. So I'm interested in your success tips, but I'm also interested in the failures. You know, there's no doubt that people experience a lot of pain and suffering in the world, and something that does tend to happen with our view in terms of stability is, you know, you have a failure, so you just don't do so well in your musical, or you don't do so well in your, you know, how do you personally deal with the failure side of it. Because one thing, when you know that you're complete, so if you have a view that whatever arises naturally is part of the view, including the pain, the suffering, the failure, then you actually adopt, you relate, you have a relationship, you have a connection to failure that's a little bit different than people who sort of feel, hey, that failure is not part of me. That was the judge. The judge scored me. That was, you can quite often externalize it and put it out there and say, oh, it's the ref, it's the judge, or whatever else you want to blame. But we all know that intrinsically it's not about that, that there's when you have a really deep stability and confidence in something, you pick yourself up. So I'd love to hear what your views are on, the success, like the posture, and how you deal with failure when it does happen.
Yeah, I'll go first. I'll start with the failure part. I think failure is so important. I love failure to the extent that you can love failure. I think my soccer career, my high school soccer career, and before that always started as kind of, I'll tell a little story here, the underdog. I started later than all my peers. And so as I practiced really hard to catch up, and I went and I repetition, and I always had this drive. I kept having this drive, but there was always this part of me that continued saying, you aren't good enough. The people watching you, they don't think you're good enough. The coaches, they don't think you're good enough. You started late, you'll never be as good as them. And that has always, I still struggle with it. It's still my own challenge that I think most people have that challenge. We have this built into us that we're not good enough, but we are good enough. But that's always been my challenge in soccer. And I hear that when I'm practicing and people are watching me, random people, the people driving by, and you don't make a shot, you don't make clean contact, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just like, again, what am I, 5? Like, but that has been a real personal battle for me, in all seriousness. So I've taken it on a mental level. It's a mental issue. There's nothing my body can do better. I can practice as hard as I want, and I'll never get over the fact that I think that I am not good enough if I just practice. But mentally, it comes down to this focus and this self-love. And those are the keys in soccer for me, is this mental ability to be on this pitch, to be, on the mat or whatever, and just be inside you and be thinking on your own level and don't care about whoever is around you. And that comes from being able to say, I'm good enough at soccer. This is what I love to do, and it's born from love. And the fact that I love soccer and that's born from love is enough. And that makes it good enough. Doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. The people don't matter. So that's one of the things I will say as a failure, something to learn from. And I've had lots of failures in soccer. there were 2 leagues at the beginning, the rec league and the strikers league. And the rec league was kind of the frowned upon league. I started in the rec league. They're like the not good enough kids. Are they from the rec league? Like that kind of thing. But that has all been just taken away by this mental state of I'm good enough and I can focus when I'm playing soccer, to let that go away when it truly counts, in those moments where it is you and the ball and those things. And that stays true for violin for me as well. And then as far as like those key things, the first part of the question, I'll say focus. I can say it a million times. And then it's just what I've experienced. And then compassion, as far as being a leader on the pitch, and compassion and listening and empathy. I've heard in Hobie they emphasize this, that leaders are serving the people, their community. That's what a leader means, is to serve the people around your community. The people in your community are not serving the leaders. When you're a leader, you're taking on the responsibility to putting the people you're serving first. And that's in soccer, that's in the world, that's in politics. It's all in that you're serving the people around you. And if you can have that and have that compassion so you can reach out and be empathetic, that's what truly defines, success and leadership, in my opinion. So my humble opinion.
It's beautiful, beautiful opinion.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
It really is.
Sarah, I'd love to hear what you have to say about your leadership experiences.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely relate to a lot of the things that you said, Abby. And I also, going off of like, we're defining success, I think, you have to stop and first ask yourself, like, okay, what is success? Is it a gold medal? Is it, getting a scholarship? Is it, what is it? And I mean, this is something that is very foundational to UCLA athletics. We learn from day one as freshmen that, we talk about John Wooden and his pyramid of success. And for those of you who might not be familiar, his definition of success and the definition that UCLA athletics is kind of based on is like success is peace of mind and knowing that you put forth your best effort to do the best, to become the best that you're capable of becoming. So it's the key components of that is your peace of mind and knowing that you did the best that you can do. So it's you have to decide. It's only coming from you deciding that you're successful. And it's very easy to lose sight of that definition when you are striving towards a goal. And the thing is, those goals are very important because big goals, like for my team, winning the national championship, that goal every year unites us in a purpose and a road. But while that's the goal, what we're building alongside it are these successes every day of, supporting a teammate, like building strength, being empathetic. And I think all of these things, an underlying component that Abby talked about is, self-love and compassion. And when you bring failure into the conversation, I believe that if you reframe failure as something that can contribute to your growth and your success kind of pot where you're putting in like net growth, if you kind of come at it at two angles where they converge from, okay, if I fail, I learn and then I grow. But the other component that a lot of people sometimes miss, you hear over and again, learn from your mistakes. But what about learn from your successes or your wins? So on your best days, you still need the most successful people to analyze their best days and their wins on top and say, okay, how can I use that to also make me get better and grow? Because if you just kind of let go of, okay, a great day, and then that's like your standard, then the next day is a little bit, the next time you dip down a little, you might not have benefited from that win and that success. So it kind of becomes an angle where you've kind of cornered yourself into a positive win-win situation where no matter what the outcome is, you can have confidence that you're going to grow from your experiences and become a better, more full and experienced person. And it's, I think it's really important to emphasize that because there are so many variables in our lives right now, and especially in sports. For gymnastics, 6 people go up on each event for college, and the top 5 scores count. And, on a team of 20 where many of my teammates are Olympians and, I'm coming at it, I haven't had that experience, but I'm living my dream. I'm beyond blessed and grateful to be part of this team. You have to stop and ask yourself, okay, so what are the constants that I can come in every day, no matter what, to contribute to the team energy and my teammates' success because we have that team goal. So for me, that's, getting a good night's sleep and coming in with a good attitude, ready to work, ready to support my teammate, to be a shoulder to lean on, to be someone that they can talk to, and then to put forth my best effort in my performance and to know that, okay, I did give it my all today. And that's a win to me. That's a success. Even if no one else sees it, that's my peace of mind in saying that was a win. That was a success. And that's your internal dialogue that you start to hear, you know, when you look in the mirror, you say, okay, like you're doing this, like you're doing great. And you have to be your own hype woman, because even if you have fans coming and hyping you up and telling you did great and you're still saying, but it wasn't good enough inside, then it's never going to be good enough and you're never going to feel successful no matter how many awards you win. So that's kind of my angle on it.
Beautiful. Holly.
Oh, so beautiful. I don't really want to say anything because there's so much wisdom here already. Like, why would I add anything? I don't need to say a word. Oh, Sara, so wise. Sara and Abby for president, vice president.
Yeah.
I'm a little young, maybe. Sara's almost there.
Yeah, really wise words, both of you. And you know, I know since some of our friends in meditation are watching, and I was thinking about what you were saying, Sara, about, you know, being good enough, and that you have to be the person that brings that, which was really my article was speaking to, was becoming that for yourself and not looking to others for validation, because that's a trap ultimately. And that we just, and I love what you said about, framing it up so that it's a win-win no matter what happens. If I succeed, I have an opportunity to learn. If I fail, I have an opportunity to learn. And anywhere in between, I have an opportunity to learn. So I can't fail. And then what you said about, you know, I have to be my own hype woman.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, that's great.
Be your own hype woman.
Your own hype woman.
Totally. That's a one for the books.
It absolutely is. Yeah. Stephen?
That is wonderful. I do think, I mean, it begs a natural follow-on question, because, you know, what you are talking about is leadership, and you're talking about enlightened leadership, you know, people who consider everything a win-win. So if you look around the world, and I'd like to know your view on the current leadership, and not pointing out anything in particular, but if you were to look at it, so what you've said, basically, you could have come straight off the retreat with me, and said, because they say much the same things, but in very colorful terms. They say something to the tune of like, everything that arises in your life is basically an ally, a friend. And, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's a child, whether your child self or your child role comes out, or your wild, mad, crazy yogi self comes out, or a magical self comes out, or a demonic self comes out, or a king or queen self, or or something like a jewel comes out of your practice. It doesn't matter, because you've actually learned that all of these are connected. You're able to flexibly change roles. So sometimes you might be a father or a mother, sometimes you might be a gymnast, sometimes you might be a CEO, sometimes you might be a president, sometimes you might be somebody who's just simply helping a child that's crying. And so, and you're able to flexibly move through these identities, but in a kind of way, your identity less, because you're not grasping and holding on to any one of those particular identities. You're able to flexibly move. So when you're in the role of, you know, the gymnast who's about to go for the gold medal, or the soccer player who's in, you know, the finals of the World Cup, you are in that role. But then when you get off it, you're able to equally change. You're able to support a cause. You're able to, you know, be clear and aware around, say, some charity that you're working with. So you're able to flexibly move through various identities without actually grasping onto any single one, because ultimately, you know, that deep down, that what's happening within you is a pure and sacred space. Like you, and it doesn't have just one identity that sacredness attaches onto. So I'm really curious about what your view is on enlightened leadership. If you take the wisdom and the beauty that you've contributed, you know, to this wonderful conversation, what is it that you think at the moment is lacking? You know, so I've heard you speak about compassion, and I've heard you speak about the win-win, you know, and in all those circumstances, and all the other, you know, the sacredness of silence and so on. So what do you think is missing? And what could we actually do as a planet, as one humanity, to bring about enlightened leadership? What would that look like for you?
I can go off of that a little bit. I mean, if you're asking what can we do about it, I mean, this is kind of the most obvious thing, but if you're of age, vote. You know, like it's simple. But the second we start to, you know, think that our voice doesn't matter, our vote doesn't count, someone else will do it. I mean, that's kind of, for me, that's what's kind of giving, you know, you're letting the cracks flow, because a lot of people saying that my vote doesn't matter, then, you know, if everybody's doing that, then nothing happens. And it's kind of the same, like, you know, bystander effect. If somebody's, you know, if something's wrong and somebody sees someone who needs help and somebody else thinks, oh, the next person will drive by and cover it. It's like, no, everybody needs to do your part. And so if you have a view, you need to educate yourself, and you need to seek out conversations with other people. And I think that we need to start having more open dialogue. Sorry, hold on. Guys, I'm on a call. It's my family.
Yeah, Sarah, that's brilliant. I think totally, by not voting, and I'm not of age, obviously, but by not voting, you're giving up your voice, and that is a fundamental issue that people have today. You know, you matter, your voice matters, you're a leader, you can be a leader, everyone's a leader. Speak up or listen, right? They come hand in hand. So that you can contribute to the world. We all have something to give. And that's how the world truly gets better. We all have our own piece of the puzzle. I kind of view it as a puzzle. You know, nobody's wrong. We just have different experiences.
Yeah, and I think going off of that, in like what I see that's missing in leadership is, it's not, you know, I don't think that leaders are expected to never make mistakes, you know, but a good leader needs to acknowledge where they have made a mistake and where their view maybe wasn't representative or was hurtful or judgmental, and they need to listen to feedback, and they need to acknowledge where they went wrong and then move forward and be able to, you know, adjust their opinions based on current information. And I think that when people are really attached to this one identity, this one character pleasing, trying to, like, you know, build their ego up, and they're so defensive of, you know, like, their views, it can be very, very challenging. And I think the best leaders have open minds and open hearts. And I think that I really liked where you were going with the you know, an identity list. Like, I think the paradox of, like, humanity is that we strive for this concrete identity, and we try to find our purpose in ourself, and to, you know, have everyone know what that identity is, and to know within yourself your purpose and identity. But the truth is that identity is kind of, sorry, it's so noisy. Rachel, you need to be quiet. Identity is kind of this, it's like, if you're, you know, looking at a graph, it kind of never converges. It just it's infinite, because your experiences are infinite. And so the harder we try to find our concrete identity, the more closed off our mind may become, because we're attached to this old self or this old definition of who we thought we were. But the second you let go and you open your mind and you open your heart, then you're kind of carrying yourself forward through whatever environment, whatever interactions, and you're ready to take in whoever you're speaking to, and you're ready to hear them, and to, you know, have your mind be malleable, and to lead with your heart with good intentions and love. And I think that's really the basis of good leaders.
Yeah, well said. That's beautiful. You could have written a meditation manual there by talking about letting go, and then, you know, letting go of the identity, and, you know, going into love, because basically that's exactly the same principle. It comes back to that, you know, in any one moment in your life, you know, like you're talking about competition, you get to be number 6 on the team, and maybe only 5, you know, your performance is not the one that counts, for example, but you still contribute to that team. You still got to bring that love. You got to let the team know that they're there, because that's the thing that matters. So, you know, you've said it with voting, but you've also said it in all the principles that you've spoken about. It's a really deep and powerful, you know, trait that humanity needs to remember it actually has innately, and that's this power of love, the power to be able to, you know, reach out to the team, the one humanity that we're part of, and gives some love there. Because, you know, so your analogy of the 6-person team, of which only, you know, 5 people's scores count, I mean, that is a really brilliant one, because can that 6th person at that moment actually give the love to the team and know that they're just as much a part, but also, you know, their vote counts. In other words, their vote of love counts. That's going to make all the difference. That's going to really keep that bond in the teams. Yeah, so that was a beautiful example. So Abby, anything else you'd like to add to that? Because I think Sarah's given us a, you know, wonderful segue into a finale. It sounds like you've already got the gold medal, Sarah, from what you said. It's beautiful.
Yeah, Sarah, I completely agree. With the identity and not ever having one, one of the examples that comes to my mind is, you talk to little kids, you know, we all have the niece, nephew, the little kid in their life, and one day, I want to be a vet, you know, next day, oh, I'd rather be a doctor, the next day, you know, oh, I think I want to be a grocery worker, you know, and they just keep shifting, and they never settle. And like that idea that we can be happy and have come from love, is, no matter what we do, no matter who we affect in our life, we all, I think, want to do something in our life, right? But the best thing we can do in our world today, and I believe this all the time, in small acts of kindness, is just reach out with love and to the people around you, and with empathy and kindness. And that would be my biggest, you know, tip for success, if I'm qualified to give a tip to success. But like, truly, love, empathy, listening, just so important. So many of our problems is just this misunderstanding and this hate today, especially so much hate, you know, don't read the news, people. Right? Like,
you're right.
you know, like, so much hate, polarization. Can we just find that we are one humanity, we are one group of people, and that there should be space, there is space for everybody, and that acceptance that everybody has this special essence to them, this special thing to give, comes from love. You know, I love you even if you are a Democrat and I'm a Republican. You know, I love you even if you're poor and I'm rich. Like, how many problems could be solved? How many problems could be solved if that love was just a given, universal? You know, I love you like you are my brother, like you are my sister, and that goes across anything, everything. You know, so that's my preach. Love people.
Awesome. That's beautiful. Holly, you should wind it up. That you can't say any more to what Sarah and Abby have said. That's totally awesome, beautiful love. The love of oneness.
Yeah. Yeah, both of you. I think that's a wonderful place to end it. This has been such a beautiful conversation. Such wise words from both of you, wonderful young women. I just really appreciate your time today to share with us your perspectives. And I would say that hearing them gives me great hope for the coming generation. And I really, believe that the coming generation there's more and more of you that feel this way, and that we are, that consciousness is rising forward, and that it gives me great hope and optimism. And I'm really excited to see your generation, become leaders at all levels. It doesn't matter if it's in a small group or a community or the world. It's just beautiful. So thank you. And thank you, Stephen, for your wonderful comments, as always, and insights and additions and questions. They were really, really spot on, and I greatly appreciate it.
Deepest gratitude always. Really beautiful, really beautiful. I think the girls have said, perfectly, that when you open the royal treasury of love, you close all those bottom doors to all those lower bits and pieces that humanity seems to get so stuck on, the conflict and the hatred. So yeah, open that royal love, and our planet's going to be just a completely transformed place. So, really, thank you. It was a great honor, truly, to share this with you, Abby and Sarah, and with you, Holly. Truly, deeply grateful. What wonderful wisdom.
Yeah.
Love and blessings always.
Thank you.
And thank you both. Wonderful, wonderful leadership and wise words spoken today. So thank you both. And all of you.
Thank you for initiating this conversation. And the final thing in terms of leadership that I think that, Abby, you said one thing was, if I'm qualified to give tips on success. And one thing I really appreciate about this group is the range of ages. And I think that one final thing that is sometimes missing from leadership is that we have levels, and we kind of rank people by ages. But really, yes, while our generation is the rising generation of leadership, it needs to be a joint leadership with the older generations, because you guys have lived things and seen things that we haven't seen and witnessed. And so it's going to take everybody for change together.
Oh, I love that you added that, Sarah. And I so agree with you. And, bringing in all the generations for all their perspectives, so wise. And appreciate you being here. I hope you too will consider coming back for more conversation. I'd love to talk to you more.
Of course. Love it.
Okay, great.
Of course, yes.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody who has watched. It's been just really appreciate all the support of this show, and having seen it shared. And I just am greatly appreciative that it's making its way out into the world in whatever contribution it is meant to contribute to. So, all right. Good night, everybody. Thank you.